Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to my review of tonight's edition of Smackdown. And tonight's Smackdown was held from the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. And I gotta say, tonight's Smackdown, I thought it was a decent show. Wasn't perfect or great by any means. I'd say it was much better than last night's piece of shit, didn't make sense edition of Monday Night Raw. So SmackDown was a decent show. And the show opened up tonight with Renee Young introducing Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella. We had Renee interview them about Miz and Maurice. And we saw Renee shows a clip of what happened last week in the Daniel Bryan and Andrade Cien Almas match, where the Miz ended up coming in and interfered, ended up putting Daniel Bryan in the yes lock, and of course Maurice, attacking Brie Bella, and after they showed that clip from last week, we got another clip of what happened earlier today with Miz and Maurice, what they had to say in a WWE.com exclusive, which they wanted Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella to come down and finish, what they started. And so Maurice says that both Daniel and Brie are afraid of her and Miz. And after that clip was over, Daniel Bryan ended up saying that that clip is a perfect example of how Miz and Maurice are. And he says the reality is that Miz and Maurice are a couple of cowards. And Brie says her and Daniel didn't come out to talk about Miz and Maurice, and they don't have to wait until Hell in a Cell. And Daniel says it is time to fight. Daniel Bryan here was really hyped up on fire, wanting to have a fight. And so Daniel says it is time to fight, and Brie ends up calling out Miz and Maurice, which then led to Renee Young saying to them both that Miz and Maurice left the arena. And so Andrade, Cien Almas, and Zelina Vega end up coming out. Zelina makes fun of Daniel and Brie's reality show, what they're on, Total Bellas. She ends up calling it Total Bores. And we had Andrade on the mic. Couldn't really understand what he was saying. And the crowd was chanting what, because they couldn't understand him. So Zelina says Andrade wants to finish what he started right now. And that's how the segment ended. But it was a decent opening to SmackDown. And then we got the first match. Daniel Bryan versus Andrade Cien Almas, rematch from last week. And this was a decent match. At least we got an ending to the match tonight. Possibly might have been the ending to last week's match if the Miz didn't interfere. And the wrestling, of course, tonight, I gotta say, was much better than what we saw last night on Raw. But Daniel Bryan ended up getting the win. He ended up hitting the knee to Andrade Cien Almas. So Daniel Bryan ends up winning the match. Then we had, after the match, Brie Bella gets her payback on Zelina Vega by hitting a knee to her face. Then we had, after that happened, we had Miz and Maurice. They were on the Titantron, saying to both Daniel and Brie that he and Maurice are taking the night off and going out on a date. They said they're going to a restaurant and they they shut down the restaurant just for them because they don't feel like eating with people around. And so Miz says both Daniel and Brie, they both will have to wait till Hell in a Cell so they could embarrass them again. And that's pretty much what happened. But like I said, Daniel Bryan versus Andrade Cien Almas, the rematch, it was a decent match. And then when SmackDown came back from commercial, we saw Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella leaving the arena. They say that they are going to get dinner, and they are in for Italian food. So they're pretty much basically, trying to track down, and see if they could, get Miz and Maurice face to face. So that was that. Then we had Charlotte and Becky. They were getting interviewed by Byron Saxton. It was like one of them was in a room, the other one was in another room. And Charlotte goes on to say that, she says of course, SummerSlam, she won the SmackDown Women's Championship and also lost her best friend. And Charlotte says to Becky that, she lost the match. And that, that Becky wants to blame, Charlotte, wants to blame her. And she ends up saying, Becky put herself in her shadow. And what was really funny was Becky ends up telling Charlotte to, ends up, saying screw you to Charlotte. And that got a big pop from the crowd, which was great. And, the crowd was, of course, chanting for Becky. And, with the whole, we won't, boo Becky, because WWE ended up fucking up, this shit. They ended up fucking up Becky, and they ended up fucking up Braun Strowman. With two superstars that people are, that people like. And, they fucked up with that. And Becky says the only thing that she cares about is getting back to the top of the SmackDown Women's Division, which I don't blame her. She deserves to be, at the top of the SmackDown Women's Division. And I think everyone will agree with her on that. And she ends up saying that the title will be coming home with her. This come Hell in a Cell, where they're going to have a match. Becky and Charlotte for the title. Knowing now, Charlotte's possibly going to still retain the title. That's my prediction. Even though I want Becky to win it, still they're going to still keep it on Charlotte. So, but it was a pretty decent interview with them both. Really liking this Becky. Then we had a second match. We had Naomi versus Peyton Royce once again. Her and Billie Kay come out. They get on the mic. And they say Naomi's favorite thing is to get beat up by the both of them. And Peyton says, Naomi never learns, and that the SmackDown Women's Division will never learn that the future is iconic. So then the match got underway. This match, it was a typical women's match. Wasn't a great match by any means. Naomi ends up winning with the sunset flip on Peyton Royce to score the win. Then after the match, both Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, they end up taking down Naomi. And they send her into the ring post. And out comes Asuka. Asuka returns. We haven't seen Asuka in a while. We haven't seen her, before, SummerSlam. And she ends up coming out and ends up taking out Peyton, Royce, and Billy Kay. So, glad to see Asuka back. But all in all, Naomi versus Peyton Royce, typical women's match, wasn't a great match. Then we saw Paige backstage. The Miz and Maurice end up coming in. Miz says they had to cut their dinner short. And Maurice says, they are going to confront Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella. And Paige tells them that they left. That Daniel and Brie left. And Paige ends up telling Miz that he's going to be competing tonight against anyone who wants to. So this was an open challenge. And Miz says, he's not prepared. And he ends up saying to Paige that he wants her to be a good general manager. Paige ends up agreeing and tells both Miz and Maurice that they're free to go. But if they do, they shouldn't ever come back. So Miz was in action tonight. Miz was in the main event. Then we had R-Truth looking for Carmella. Of course, the comedy act with R-Truth. Want to have a match with Carmella. But he's there. He thinks it's Carmella there, and it's revealed to be Maurice. And Maurice ends up calling Carmella, Staten Island trash, because Truth was saying, "Oh, are you Carmella? Where's Carmella?" And Miz ends up rolling in, coming into Truth. Of course, they were former tag team partners. Miz Truth. And Miz comes and says to him, to never speak to his wife again. And he asks R-Truth, when was the last time he and him teamed up? Truth says to him that it was 7 years ago. And Miz ends up saying to Truth that was the last time he was relevant, that R-Truth was relevant, and that he's a joke now. So that was that segment. Then we had Samoa Joe ended up coming out. He says that the Styles family is starting to take his threats seriously. And he says to Styles' wife, Wendy, that he is not a monster. And that he is not the man she thinks he is. And he goes on to say that the reason he is not at the Styles house is because he made a promise to Styles' wife. And Joe ends up saying he wants the Styles clan to enjoy themselves tonight. And he says to Styles' daughter, Annie, at Hell in a Cell, he's going to take Styles, he's going to take, the title off of Styles, and that he's going to be going nighty-night. And so AJ Styles is shown on the Titantron, saying to Joe, it's okay to threaten another man, but to threaten his family. And he goes to say, that's when it stops talking. And so AJ Styles comes out. He ends up running to the ring. Joe ends up starting to throw punches to Styles. Styles ends up coming back to take down Joe. And then we see they're both outside. Joe ends up throwing Styles over the steps. Joe then starts to take a chair, thinking that he was gonna, thinking we were gonna see him hit Styles with it. And we see Styles hit the phenomenal forearm to Joe, which was really cool. Styles then ends up picking up the chair that Joe had, and Joe moves out of the way because Joe was on, the ring post, and it looked like, Styles was going to hit the chair to Joe while he was still on the ring post, but Joe ended up moving out of the way. And so we had officials come down to separate them. We had Paige also come out. So then we saw Styles then leapt from the top rope, taking down Joe and the officials over there, which was really awesome. And pretty much that's how the segment ended. But I enjoy it. I'm enjoying this Joe and Styles feud. So then we had R-Truth was still looking for Carmella. He was with Ty Dillinger, and R-Truth finds Carmella, and she tells Carmella ends up telling Truth to leave her alone, and Truth asks her to be in his corner tonight when he takes on The Miz. So it's revealed that R-Truth is going to be taking on The Miz in the main event. And Carmella doesn't buy it until R-Truth tells her that Maurice ended up calling her Staten Island trash. So Carmella got pissed at that, and she ends up saying that she wants to rip Maurice's hair out and feed it to her. And Carmella ends up walking off. Then R-Truth says that he's offering Dillinger a lesson, and Dillinger doesn't know what he could possibly Truth could possibly teach him. And so Truth says he's teaching him, he's teaching Dillinger how to get into the main event of SmackDown. And so that's what ended the other segment. But it was funny though. Really liking this funny style of R-Truth. Then we had the Triple Threat Tag Team match. Aiden English and Rusev versus the Usos and Sanity. Whoever won this match gets to face the Bar, Cesaro and Sheamus next week. And the winner of the match next week will face the New Day for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships at Hell in a Cell. And this Triple Threat Tag Team match, it was a decent match. It was an enjoyable match. It was back and forth between these tag teams. It was crazy, back and forth with them. It was pretty much all over the place, but it was entertaining. And we had Aiden English and Rusev. Rusev, they win the match. Rusev ended up hitting the Machka kick. I think it was to Eric Young. I think it was. I may be wrong on that. But Aiden English and Rusev win. They get to take on Cesaro and Sheamus next week. And whoever wins, whether it's them, whether it's Rusev and Aiden English, or Cesaro and Sheamus, the winner of the match next week will face the New Day at Hell in a Cell for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. So, but all in all, the Triple Threat Tag Team match, it was a decent match. Then we had the Miz and Maurice come out. Miz says, he couldn't believe after 8 years, that he is superior to Daniel Bryan. And he ends up saying that they are so sick of chasing Daniel and Brie all over, Detroit. So he ends up calling out Daniel and Brie. And Maurice says they aren't going to come out because they are both afraid of them. Miz says to Daniel, he asks him, who's the coward now? Pretty much calling out Daniel Bryan, saying, who's the coward now? And so Miz says that Daniel Bryan discusses him. And at Hell in a Cell, they will be responsible about what happens. And that it will be their fault. So Carmella ended up coming out, of course, with R-Truth after, and then they go to a commercial. SmackDown goes to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from commercial, it was the main event: R-Truth versus The Miz. This was an okay match. Wasn't a great match by any means, though, but it was fun with R-Truth in it. Of course, we had Carmella at ringside. Outside, Maurice was there too. But it looked like The Miz was getting the upper hand on R-Truth in the end. But Daniel Bryan ended up coming out. This was towards the end of the match. Daniel Bryan ended up coming out, and it ended up distracting Miz. R-Truth rolled up The Miz, won the match. R-Truth ended up winning. So it was just Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella there. After R-Truth pinned Miz, Daniel Bryan just rushed into the ring, and he ended up putting Miz in the yes lock. And we saw Maurice running away from Brie. Brie ended up pulling Maurice's hair, tossed her into the ring. Then we had Zelina Vega and Andrade, Cien Almas, come out. They end up attacking Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella. And it looked like they got the upper hand, Zelina and Andrade. Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella end up putting both Andrade and Zelina in the yes lock, sending a message to both Miz and Maurice. And that was pretty much how SmackDown ended. So, but all in all, R-Truth versus The Miz was an okay match. Wasn't a great match by any means, but it was fun. It was a fun little match. So, but yeah. So, anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's edition of SmackDown. Thank you all for watching, and hope you all enjoyed this review. And definitely give this video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all back here tomorrow night for my Lucha Underground review. So that will be coming up tomorrow night. So until then, I'll see you all tomorrow night for the Lucha Underground review.